Over southern England in the summer of 1944, a novel and frightening sound emerged. It was neither the typical hum of propellers nor the constant drone of bombers. Rather, the sound of Germany's V-1 flying bombs hurtling toward British cities was a crisp, mechanical buzz. It was difficult for many of the best piston-engine aircraft in the Royal Air Force to capture them. However, another aircraft was getting ready for a completely different kind of combat on a tranquil Manston airstrip. There were no propellers in its engines. Its groundbreaking concept, which had been silently evolving over years, was the source of its power. When the plane took off, it was a momentous occasion for aviation in general as well as for Britain. The Gloster Meteor marked the start of the Royal Air Force's transition into the jet era and was Britain's first jet fighter. One of the Second World War's fiercest technological races gave rise to the Meteor. Engineers around Europe were trying to figure out how to push aeroplanes past the capabilities of piston engines. A large portion of this work in Britain was focused on engineer Frank Whittle's groundbreaking turbojet design. Sustained high speed without the mechanical complexity of propellers was what his engine claimed to deliver. As the war worsened by 1940, the British government saw the promise and commissioned a new aircraft based on Whittle's jet engine. The Gloster Meteor was the outcome. On March 5, 1943, the first prototype took off, becoming the first jet-powered fighter in British history. The Meteor became the first operational jet aircraft in Britain when it joined the Royal Air Force in July 1944, just a year later, with No. 616 Squadron. It also held the distinction of being the only Allied jet aircraft to engage in combat during World War II. However, there is a subtle discrepancy in the Meteor's tail. The aircraft itself was remarkably normal, even if its propulsion was new. It was more like a late-war propeller fighter than a futuristic jet because of its broad fuselage, straight wings, and twin engines installed in nacelles under the wings. This was a purposeful design to guarantee dependability. While the revolutionary 20mm turbojet engines were developed, engineers selected a dependable and well-known airframe. The Meteor's distinctive engineering feature was those engines. The aircraft, which was first powered by Rolls-Royce Welland turbojets, produced a sustained speed that was difficult for propeller fighters to match. Jet propulsion provided more constant speed across a range of altitudes, in contrast to piston aircraft, which were only effective at specific altitudes. In the years immediately following the war, Meteors established some of the first jet speed records in history thanks to later models with more potent Rolls-Royce Derwent engines. The Meteor was far from flawless, though. Early models were challenging for novice pilots because of their short range, high fuel consumption, and handling problems. Additionally, the initial production version had only slight speed advantages over the fastest piston fighters. Even its potent nose-mounted armament, consisting of 4 20mm engine cannons, was not impervious to issues. Pilots occasionally encountered gun jams during crucial moments during early combat sorties against V-1 flying bombs in 1944. The Meteor's use was also influenced by political prudence. British officials were concerned that German experts may study the engines of one of these new aircraft and discover important secrets if it crashed in enemy territory. Because of this, early Meteor units were mainly limited to protecting British airspace instead of conducting deep offensive missions over Europe. The Meteor soon demonstrated its value in spite of these drawbacks. Because of its speed, the aircraft was ideal for intercepting the V-1 flying bombs that posed a threat to southern England and London. Meteor pilots successfully destroyed the robotic weapons for the first time in August 1944. In order to upset the V-1's gyroscope and send it crashing to the earth without firing a shot, one well-known strategy involves flying alongside the bomb and gently tipping its wing with the fighter's own wing. Flying the Meteor signified a significant emotional change for RAF pilots. Many had received training on fabled piston fighters such as the Hurricane and Spitfire. They were now inside an aircraft that, in contrast, felt nearly silent, advancing softly instead of blasting forward with propeller torque. A preview of the future was provided by the experience. The Meteor represented technological resiliency and patriotism for a country that had suffered years of bombing and adversity. Additionally, the aircraft was crucial to the Gloster Aircraft Company's survival and good name. Gloster earned a place in aviation history and proved that British industry could compete in the new jet-powered era by successfully building the country's first operational jet fighter. Between 1943 and 1955, about 4,000 Meteors were constructed and used by the Royal Air Force as well as air forces in Europe, the Middle East, and South America. The Second World War was not the end of the Meteor's career. Improved models quickly emerged, such as the Meteor F.8, which went on to become the series' most advanced variant. In one of the first jet versus jet battles in history, Meteors flew both air-to-air and ground assault missions while serving with the Royal Australian Air Force during the Korean War. Even though it was later surpassed by more recent swept-wing fighters like the MiG-15, the Meteor continued to show dependability and flexibility in a combat situation that was changing quickly. However, aviation technology was advancing at a remarkable rate by the early 1950s. The following generation of fighters was characterized by swept wings, afterburning engines, and higher altitudes. The straight-wing Meteor started to appear outdated in comparison to these modern, streamlined aircraft. More sophisticated aircraft, including the Hawker Hunter and the Gloster Javelin, gradually superseded it in the Royal Air Force. Nevertheless, the Meteor did not swiftly vanish. Variants continued to be used as trainers, night fighters, reconnaissance aircraft, and testing grounds for new technologies. Some were even used to test new turbine designs and early ejection seats. The aircraft continued to be used in some capacities as target towing aircraft for training exercises well into the 1970s and even the early 1980s. The Gloster Meteor is still mostly found in museums and collections of vintage aircraft. Occasionally, during air shows, a few meticulously conserved examples soar into the sky, their twin engines emitting a unique whine that once heralded the dawn of a new era. In retrospect, the Meteor was neither the most graceful nor the fastest jet of its era. However, its significance is found elsewhere. The Royal Air Force moved from the era of propellers to the era of jet power thanks to the aircraft that helped Britain pass a technological frontier. The Meteor had a quiet but significant beginning for both the engineers who constructed it and the pilots who initially entered its cockpit. Consider subscribing to the channel if you like learning about the background and legacy of iconic aircraft like the Gloster Meteor. There's always another tale from the history of aviation that has to be recalled.